When you hear the word witchcraft, what do you think? I wanted to find this out, so I asked a few people to see what they really think it is.
Witchcraft, I think of it's total baloney.
I have no idea what witchcraft is, other than, I've heard of the Salem witch trials, and they basically prosecuted people, and I know that. I don't know much about witchcraft.
I think witchcraft is make-believe, but if you were to put it in perspective, it is just unnatural or supernatural events being controlled by a entity.
The most common answer I got was it's not real, or they described it as some supernatural practice. One thing that caught my attention was the answer about the Salem witch trials. The Salem witch trials began during the spring of 1692, after a group of young girls in Salem Village, Massachusetts, claimed to be possessed by the devil and accused several local women of witchcraft. These girls were seen as evil and scary, but why is that? I talked to Brandon Knight, co-owner of the Modern Mystic Shop, a spiritual store in Pond City Market, about why he thinks people view witchcraft as evil.
The biggest thing, the misconceptions come from, actually colonialism. I think it's almost like a racial issue in a way. Missionary type settings, what they did was they paved the way for this prejudice against anything that's not Christian or not white. So the indigenous ways of being with the earth and the white cultures, like the Celts and the Nords and European-centric Germanic, that was all lost again when Christianity came. So that was wiped out a long time ago in most of your European-centric people. And then we started embedding that everything that's not Christian is evil. And so the priests started being missionaries, and when they'd go into these cultures, the shamans and the matriarchs are the ones who passed down the lineage wisdom. All that wisdom was lost. We stopped listening to the shamans because they were demonic, and they were of the devil, and the priests were the ones who had all the answers. And say, everything that's right with the world is what I say. So your ways are primitive and awful, and they're not of Christ, and so you need to stop listening to that. And so that control and that power is something that all the old world craved, and so that was something that pervaded all cultures at that point in the missionary style, and from Europe and everything like that, and how it all pervaded down. And so in that, all that wisdom was shucked aside. And so we made everything evil that's not like Christ. That's why people view everything that's not like what they're used to understanding as evil, is because not only is it foreign at this point, but also it's really, really ingrained in Christian culture that everything is evil that's not like that. That if we don't know about it, it's evil. That's the safest way to be.
I also wanted to talk about how being closed-minded could affect us as people and what we believe in.
But it also keeps us small. It keeps us boxed in as human beings. It keeps us out of our birthright as human beings. It keeps us away from our ability to transform as human beings, our ability to really move forward into our gifts and an understanding of selves. And that's what a greater connection to self and a greater connection to other people and our environment calls you to do. It calls you to walk through the fire. It calls you to walk through your suffering. And it calls you to go there so that you can be a greater and stronger human being. You can be a better version of yourself. And that's not easy. And so it's not a popular thing. A popular thing is just to bend the knee and go on. Bend the knee, get saved, and you're good. So I think that's why. I think that's why it's not as accepted. It's this thing that seems complex. It's this thing that challenges us and challenges our fears and challenges our belief structures. We don't want to be challenged. So now, how in the world do we ever approach it? And so it's very interesting to see it come forward, but I do believe that the younger generations are moving forward.
Even after hundreds of years, these misconceptions stayed. One of the main myths that stayed prominent is that voodoo, crystals, and tarot are all the same thing, when in fact they're all very different and separate practices.
And a lot of people do lump it all together, like the messing with crystals versus witchcraft versus, all the different spiritual traditions out there like voodoo and different things like that. There's layers and depths to each thing that can be understood. Like you could spend a lifetime, for instance, studying crystals, their effect on the body, their effect on your spirituality, on the chakras. Even if just from an experiential point of view, you could spend a lifetime in that whole realm studying them and what those minerals mean to us and how they can engage our spirituality and bring us back to ourselves. You could do the same thing with tarot. You could do the same thing with magic, and it's all different and all engages different experiences of the self. And so a lot of people try to, coming from a Christian background or a very religious background, try to lump it all together. And that's simply not the truth. I know plenty of people that can practice Christianity and do practice Christianity and still get into crystals. There are magic practitioners that are Christian. And so I think one of the biggest misconceptions coming in and coming from the religious air that we breathe as a society is that it's all lumped into this experience, when actually there's multiple layers and levels of experience that you can go into.
I asked Brandon Knight what he really wanted to convey by sitting down and doing this interview with me.
The biggest message I think that we have is that getting into this and understanding, I think that there is a greater experience of being a human being. That is our birthright, that is our calling as a species, is this point of spiritual development where we connect to everything more fully around us. I think connection is the baseline of our birthright. So we connect to each other, we connect to our environment and the land, we connect to the astral realm or the spiritual plane more fully and understand it and start to take on the characteristics of gods and goddesses that make us more powerful and more beautiful and more well-informed about the energies around us. I think that those are experiences that people never even begin to conceptualize when they start to approach this and understand that it's about connection. The ultimate driving force of the human experience is love. You don't define that in a superficial way, you define it in a way that has an understanding of connection and what that means, because connection is where we're all headed. So the thing that I would want to convey to people is our magic as human beings is in our connection and how well we connect to each other. All of these things that are in that big ball of wax that people lump it into are the beginnings of how to start to do that, of how to start to have a greater connection.
Younger generations are helping break down these myths on spirituality and witchcraft due to the many of them being able to do more proper research on the topic, as well as incorporating some of these practices into their lives. I believe future generations will help crush these myths and misconceptions to help us see what witchcraft and spirituality really is.